We'll be now hearing from some of our industry colleagues. Lorraine Boyle is a consultant at the market access team of Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals, and she'll be talking about access to treatment from the industry perspective. Ms. Boyle.
Hello, I'm Lorraine Boyle, and I'm here representing Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals today, and I've been asked to talk to you about the industry perspective with respect to access to treatment. The key topics I want to talk about are currently the processes for review and evaluation for rare disorders or conditions, and the challenges with those review processes for conditions like scleroderma. And then speak a bit about the future and some novel approaches for access, as well as overcoming some of those challenges that we could be facing in the future. Unlike more common conditions, in the rare condition space, RCTs or randomized controlled trials or placebo-controlled trials are often not feasible. Patient population base is smaller. Sometimes there's no treatment options available, and standard of care is not fully effective. Once there's a decision made to introduce a new treatment into the Canadian environment, data is submitted to Health Canada, and the two questions that Health Canada are trying to address are, is the treatment safe for human use? And does the treatment work? And then subsequent to that, payers in Canada, be they HTA agencies or public drug plans or public hospitals or private insurance companies, to name a few, they have different questions in Health Canada. How does this treatment work compared to other treatments or to standard of care that we're currently paying for? And in other words, what is the comparative effectiveness of these new treatments versus what we're currently paying for? And the second question is around, is the treatment then affordable? And how will this impact my budget? So based on those evaluations, the payers agree or they do not agree to pay. So the processes for rare conditions in the payer space is very similar to what it is for more common conditions with respect to how payers evaluate new treatments. The challenge for industry then is to demonstrate the comparative effectiveness and to balance the evidence that's available with respect to the clinical value for the new treatment and the economic value that this treatment will bring for Canadians. If you look at this a little bit more deeply, you can see that RCTs and placebo-controlled trials may not be feasible, as mentioned before, because there are no comparative treatments, or in fact, undertaking placebo-controlled trials may be unethical. Small trial populations often lead to a potential for a small evidence base, so there may be clinical value uncertainty for the payers. The standard of care around the world may not be uniform, and alternative treatment options are available in different countries, and that's variable. And country-specific clinical practice guidelines might be unique and might also affect how the approach to care along the treatment paradigm is implemented. Furthermore, in rare conditions, the disease area can be quite complex. Oftentimes, the disease etiology is poorly understood, and the evidence to support payer decision-making is complex. Bear in mind that payers view multiple treatments and evaluate multiple treatments in multiple therapeutic areas. So generating an awareness and a thorough understanding of this disease and these rare disease spaces can be very challenging. So the challenge and the onus for industry is to be able to prepare a compelling evidence package so that payers can make the decisions that they need to make with confidence. So ultimately, value demonstration is essential for success. What are the clinically meaningful health outcomes for the Canadian population in need? And what is that economic value, which is sometimes measured by healthcare resource utilization use, displacement of other treatments that are currently in place, and finally, the impact on the payer's overall budget with introducing these new treatments. So perhaps we've been trying all along to fit a square peg into a round hole, which is why the federal government and organizations like the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders and Durhan just mentioned, there's a need for a rare disease drug strategy, a different way of looking at evaluating these new treatments. The current evaluation processes may not be suitable. Demonstration of comparative effectiveness is very challenging. And the early value demonstration is often for very small, very specific trial population, but there may be other patients that could benefit from these treatments who didn't meet the specific trial criteria. So how do we deal with this, and what is the potential for the future for overcoming these challenges? Well, there's an approach at looking at ongoing demonstration of clinical and economic value. And this hovers around the questions about, was the right decision made to reimburse at the right time with the evidence base that was available at the time for decision making? Can new evidence support or refute that decision with real world utilization and real world evidence to support that treatment? And can clinical practice guidelines subsequently evolve to incorporate the new treatment? Innovative access agreements, that language is out in the literature to demonstrate real world clinical and economic value. And there are multiple terms that are used to highlight some of these access agreements. And these include coverage with evidence development frameworks, value-based agreements, or managed entry agreements, to name a few. And many industry partners are willing and prepared to engage in these innovative access agreements to demonstrate, once a new treatment is introduced into the environment, that it is clinically effective and economically viable. But to do all of that, we really need systems and processes to support the data form of patient registries or patient databases or other healthcare databases that might be available in the area. Multiple stakeholders do need to be actively engaged in the process from the very outset, with patients at the core of this. And alignment of all the stakeholders on the clinical and economically meaningful outcome measures that would resonate and that would demonstrate that these new treatments are in fact effective and worth paying for. So when we talk about stakeholders, what could this future look like? These are 5 groupings of stakeholders, and they're by no means mutually exclusive or thorough, but they're general 5 buckets of stakeholders. And patients and patient advocacy organizations are really at the central focus of this. And what would be encouraging would be if there was early, collaborative, and simultaneous discussions happening at the point of the regulator decision making, so that would be Health Canada, through to when the health technology assessment agencies and the payers are starting to make their decisions and have discussions with industry on facilitating timely and effective decision making. And this is where we see some traction right now in Canada, where there's movement to have some simultaneous discussion to make sure that there's alignment on review and evaluation processes from that point of regulation decision making through to reimbursement and access. And in this way, this is the only way to ensure there's timely access to innovative treatments to support treatment goals for Canadians who are in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle, for your review of access issues, the complex challenges of navigating the regulatory space in Canada. We're calling for us, for example, that randomized controlled trials, placebo-controlled trials, are not feasible in this domain of rare diseases where the number of populations are small, as well as the fact that industry must demonstrate clinical value versus economic value. And part of that, of course, is creating things like patient registries, patient advocacy groups, and of course, helping to create centers of excellence, ultimately helping to lead to better patient outcomes. Thank you, Ms. Boyle.